Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Lisa Harding, and today's guest is someone who brings a deep understanding of both sides of the professional world, Grace Stevens. Grace started her career as a corporate VP before following her passion and becoming a public school teacher. After 20 years in the classroom, she now dedicates herself to helping educators protect their energy, avoid burnout, and find greater balance and joy in their lives. Grace is the author of the best-selling Positive Mindset Habits for Teachers and the host of the Teacher Self-Care and Life Balance podcast. She's also the teacher retention and empowerment coach for many schools that want to stop the burnout cycle and keep their best teachers thriving. In today's conversation, we're going to explore what burnout really looks like for teachers, how to set boundaries and say no without guilt, and how to reclaim your energy as a teacher. Whether you're committed to staying in education or you're making a change and want to get through these last months or seasons in the classroom. So let's jump in. I'm Lisa Harding, ex-EdTech CEO turned certified teacher career coach. It wasn't all that long ago that I was recruiting, interviewing, and hiring teachers for roles in corporate America. Teachers that ended up being some of my all-time best employees. Fast forward through my own career transition, where I left my role as CEO to become a stay-at-home mom, I now work with and empower teachers to transform their lives by turning their once distant career dreams into realities. In this podcast, I give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. If you're a burnt-out teacher or simply need a change and you're looking to create a life you love, you're in the right place, friend. Let's get started. Great. Let's jump in and welcome Grace. Before we jump into the good stuff that we're going to talk about today, Grace, with burnout and setting limitations and learning how to say no, I like to start with a fun question. So can you share with our audience just one small thing that you do in your daily life that brings you happiness?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a lot. I would say something I do kind of on the down low. Now, this is your audience is just meeting me. I don't want them to check out already and be like, "This lady is way too woo for me," because I like to think I'm very kind of a science nerd, neuro based. But yeah, I'm a little what we would call woo adjacent, let's say. But in my mind, all day, I go through the day looking for things that I like. Like I just set my radar, and I call it my lovely list. And like I'll see a bird and I'm like, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" Or "Doesn't that sound lovely?" And I just literally go through my day no matter what. I used to do it when I was teaching, walking across the playground, like, "Oh, let me set my radar for something I like, kids playing or hearing laughing or whatever." And I just make this kind of mental list as I go through the day. "Oh, isn't that lovely?" And then at night when I'm falling asleep, I try and remember many things as I can off my lovely list. And honestly, it's just a nice way to go through the day. So that's kind of what I do, and it does bring me joy. And sometimes if I'm grumpy or something, or just things aren't going well, I always go outside. I'm like, let's go outside, go on a lovely walk, and I will find things that I like, no matter
I
what.
love that. And I'm definitely going to implement that in my own life. Just seeing the positive in the
Yeah,
little things in life. I love that. The lovely list. I
the
think
lovely
I think
list.
you
Yeah.
might need to trademark that. Might be your next book, Grace.
Well, I did, right. So I wrote the whole book, Positive Mindset Habits for Teachers. And one of those, that was one of the mindsets, was like, look for things that you like, right? Set an intention, just set your radar that way. But I never called it the lovely list in the book. It just kind of stuck in my head because I just always, people laugh at me when we're doing something. I'll be like, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" Okay. And so, yeah, so I called it the lovely list. Yeah, maybe I should trademark it. The lovely list.
I love that. And I'm sure we'll talk about your book a little bit more, and I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. But one thing I think is interesting, Grace, is normally on my podcast, I interview or have guests that were former teachers that
Yeah.
are now in corporate America. And today, you're kind of the opposite of that. You were
Hmm.
VP in corporate America and then was moved into, you were moved to go into education. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that journey and what sparked you to make that leap.
Okay, so yeah, it is. I mean, I think it is ironic that I think that's funny that I went the other way. So I just followed the traditional path, right? I went from school to college to, you just fall into things. And I ended up moving from Europe to America. I was on a business trip. I ended up staying, and then I ended up being in the corporate world. And for about 13 years, worked my way up, did all the things I was supposed to do, got to the top, was the VP, and from the outside, everything, we didn't have Instagram back then, but if we did, I would have been crushing it on Insta, right? I had the house, the cars, like the two beautiful huskies, the two perfect kids. I had it
Aw.
all, and I was so miserable. I was so stressed and overwhelmed, and didn't feel like honestly, I didn't feel like I participated in my life. I felt like I financed it, but like I outsourced it. Okay, these people look after my kids. These people look after my garden. You know what I mean? Like I really just wanted to participate in my life. And especially what happened was I was dropping my daughter off. It was the last day of school of kindergarten. And when I picked her up, she said, "What are we going to do tomorrow, Mom?" And I remember saying, "Oh, well, you're going to go to after school program tomorrow." Like that's what summer was going to be for her, right? Was the summer program. And I just remember the look on her face, and I just thought, yeah, I can't do this anymore. Like there's always going to be time to make more money and do other things, right? But like this is precious. And so I really decided, okay, I'm going to make a change. And when I was a kid, I wanted to be a teacher. And I thought, I'm really going to try it. And I was very lucky to have a supportive family, because obviously that wasn't without a huge kind of upheaval. Had to go back to school, two young kids, all those things, huge pay cut. Became a teacher, and honestly, loved it, loved it, loved it. Like I felt it was magical. It checked all the boxes for me. Like it had purpose, which I hadn't felt I had in my corporate career. It was important. It came easy to me. It was a fun way to spend the day with the kids. And then, and obviously I did have that extra time with my kids that I wanted. Those magical summers and spring breaks we had off together, lots of things. But I would say within 2 to 3 years, I had created the exact same circumstances for myself. Overwhelmed, burnt out, overcommitted, complete lack of boundaries, stressed out, bringing work home, all the things that I had done in the corporate world, which I was looking to get away from, I had recreated for myself. And so then I decided, yeah, I can't change careers again. And I didn't want to change careers, but I'm like, there are some things about me that I need to fix. And that's kind of when I took this I kept teaching, kept enjoying it, kept loving it, did it for over 20 years, but decided to do a deep dive into positive psychology, other things, and learn the things that made teaching sustainable for me. And so that's kind of what happened. But I absolutely, becoming a teacher was a dream come true for me, and I completely loved it. However, having come to it later in life, I knew I would never be that teacher that put in all those years and be able to retire on their full salary. I always knew that I was going to have to do a pivot at some point and go back to doing something else. And so I said, okay, I'll be a public servant for 20 years, Title I school. I did that, and then 20 years brought me through COVID. I taught through COVID, got all the kids back in the room, taught for another year and a half, and then I moved, and then I left intentionally, not because I was burnt out, but because like, okay, I got like 10 years left to go do something else now. So it isn't the normal teacher arc, but I think the teacher experience of going in very naive, thinking I would be sitting with little kids around my feet reading stories and glitter, and which we did do, but all the other stuff, it's a lot, and it completely and utterly drives burnout. And I see why people want to leave. I remember when I wanted to become a teacher, I wanted a job where I didn't need to bring work home. How funny is that now? As a teacher, that I would have thought, oh, well, school's over at 3, right? But it isn't. And I know that now. And so, but anyway, it was magical, but I right up to the point where it wasn't, right? So
Yeah. And I think your story, even though it's the opposite,
yeah,
I think it resonates with everyone
yeah,
because I mean, I work with transitioning teachers every day, and not everyone, but a lot of people, it's the family reasons. And it's
yeah, the
like
family,
you are
yeah,
getting into it to have more time with your family. And then you realized, well, maybe not,
maybe
even in
not.
teaching. Um, and a lot of teachers will find that balance going into corporate America.
Yeah.
And I think what level you're at, because I also
Oh,
had a very
absolutely, yeah, because yeah,
long history in corporate America as well. And VP C level is much
is
more stressful
stressful
than.
than yeah, it was. I mean, I was in the staffing industry, and when I started, it was really great. And I had relationships with people, and I found them jobs, and I had relationships with customers, and I felt that I provided a lot of value. And when I went home, yeah, I was done with the day, and it was perfect. But the more I kind of moved up, the more I moved away from the parts of the job that brought me joy. And that was, I think, the mistake that I made. And I was very careful not to make that mistake in teaching, because when I went into teaching, of course, people said, oh, you have all these skills. You can, be our union rep. You can, oh, well, you know how to manage money. Like, you should be an admin. You should be you would be fast tracked to superintendent. And I absolutely knew I didn't want to do that. I said, no, I want to be in the classroom with kids, because I knew that my career path before, I had been very happy when I was like kind of doing the things that provided value, but they were lower down in the corporation. Yeah, by the time I got to the top, I felt like the only thing I do, the only value I provide is to shareholders, and that didn't really resonate with me. Whereas finding people jobs and bailing people out who are like, oh, we just moved in this area, we have no staff, so there are ways in corporate America to still have those connections and still feel a value that what you're doing has purpose, because obviously a lot of teachers have that kind of servant heart, right? That's why we do
Yep.
burnout, because we want to serve. And there's so many other ways of doing it other than just teaching. If somebody is really feeling like I gotta leave, there are lots of other options out there. I think because especially if you went straight into teaching out of school, that's all you know, right? You don't know that there are so many other things out there that can also be fun. So
And I think that's a common theme. Like you said, teachers have the servant heart. They're just special people. And a lot of teachers that I work with that are leaving, like they're still passionate about teaching in general. It's just that they're struggling so much with feeling overwhelmed.
yeah.
I'm curious, do you think that burnout is inevitable for a
Um,
teacher?
I think that unless you're very intentional about avoiding it, it is inevitable, because we all know the education system is really just held up by this kind of silent commitment that we've kind of all bought into, that it's held up on the backs of teachers doing unpaid work, right? That's basically
Yeah.
the truth, right? I'm sure it's come up on this podcast before. The average teacher works 55 hours a week. That's donating 15 hours a week to a system unpaid. That's kind of crazy. I added it up one time. It's like 3 months of full-time work, right? So when people say, oh, you have summers off, we really don't. We work them all during the school year, right? So I think that unless you're very intentional about avoiding burnout and you have some kind of skill set that can be learned, about how to set healthier boundaries, how to realize. For me, my biggest thing was always my energy teaches more than my lesson plans. So I was always very protective of my energy. Who do I hang around? Do I hang around the negative people? Do I, exhaust myself, burn the candle at both ends to make everything perfect, and then show up grumpy in class? When a teacher shows up grumpy, they're easily triggered. They don't respond well to students who aren't behaving well. Everything kind of, there's that whole co-regulation piece, right? Everything escalates and is just miserable. Whereas I always strove to really just have fun and maybe not work as many hours as other teachers, but show up as my best self. And then the day just went smoother, right? And then, kids knew I was passionate about what I wanted to do. And so if everything wasn't perfect, the kids and I would, figure it out together. But it took a while to get there. Like I said, I did burn out. And I had to really come to the point where, the common denominator here is me. right? Like this is part of what I do, is just keep giving and giving and giving and giving. And so I had to learn some skills. But I think part of the problem is one is the common narrative, right? Teachers are so afraid of judgment. It's, of other teachers. Oh, well, like that kind of, even for me, passive aggressive hints, kind of comments people would make. Well, oh, I see you leave at 4 every day. Must be nice. It's kind of, there's that kind of teacher martyr myth, right? Ooh, the more you burn yourself at the stake, the better teacher you are. And I think it's hard to break free of that. And once you break free of that, yes, you can avoid burnout. But because it's kind of the culture of it, I feel it is difficult for teachers. And it's such a shame. Because
And
I
that's
feel,
like,
no, go ahead.
I say the one thing you mentioned is like it's a skill that you have to work on
Yeah,
how and being mindful and
yeah,
intentional about it. And I think one skill I know for me, and because I have personality traits, a bit of a teacher too, which is why I think that I resonate, like love teachers so much, but it's hard to say no, Grace, like, because you don't, you want it, like a lot of us are just yes people, we're people pleasers, like
yeah.
and there is that social pressure, but at the end of the day, like we need to be able to say no. But do you have any tips on how to feel comfortable saying no, or how to do it with, with grace but still be firm?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One, absolutely, we're people pleasers as a general rule. Teaching is very female heavy, right? And so we tend to be caretakers, right? We tend to, I don't like to generalize, but it's true. Conflict avoidant, right? Just there is something that attracts, right, people with a servant heart. And so I think one of the main things, I mean, I can go through like here's 5 steps to saying no, but the first thing is just a mindset shift. You got to understand it's like an equation. Every no, when you say no to something, you're actually saying yes to something else. So it's easier for me to say no to that extra committee or whatever the parents are trying to kind of, oh yeah, please run the raffle, do the fundraising, whatever I'm being asked to do. It's easier for me to say no if I recognize that when I say no to that, I'm saying yes to going home on time, to hanging out with my kids, for taking the dog for a walk, for getting myself to the gym like I promised myself I would do, right? So that I can be healthy and show up my best self. So you have to do that equation. And every yes is a no to something else too, right? When I say yes to leaving on time, I'm saying no to being burnt out and all those other things. So there is a mindset shift. But the other mindset shift, I think, is that people feel like boundaries, saying no or saying yes, or we can't always say no. If we're a music teacher, we can't say no to putting on a concert. Right? If I'm the science teacher, I can't say no to science fair, science camp, all those things. But you can say yes with limitations. You can recognize, okay, this is part of my job. And in order for this to be successful, here's what I need from you, administrator, right? And then have some limitations around it. Okay, like that are reasonable, that are going to make sure not everything falls on your shoulders. Okay, but so all of that is part of kind of setting boundaries. And I feel that it's very like kind of trendy now to say, oh, setting boundaries, and I can tell teachers, oh, you need to set better boundaries. What the heck does that mean? They don't know what that means, right? And I feel like there's a misconception about that. That's the bigger issue, that people think, oh, setting boundaries is really, it's aggressive. I'll be seen as inflexible. I can't control other people. And having the mindset shift, setting boundaries is about your behavior, not about other people's behavior. It's about what you agree you're going to do. And it's not just about non-negotiables, like, oh, I won't bring work home. I won't work on Saturdays. I won't take parent calls after 4 o'clock, right? Those are when people think those are their non-negotiables. But there's also a whole range of preferences, desires, that you have that fall into boundaries, and it's okay to have those. And I think that's a big mindset shift for a lot of people. Hey, it's okay to have a preference. It's better to say, oh, I prefer to do this, than just say, oh, no, I don't mind. And then you really do mind, and that's the breeding ground for resentment, right? And that's not a good vibe in the classroom or on campus. But I would say if somebody really is not good at they know that they kind of get flustered and just say yes because they're really uncomfortable saying no. I always tell people, just one, start with a mindset. You're like, what is this yes going to cost me? And two, buy yourself some time. Like, just say, hey, let me think about that. Let me get back to you. Let me check my schedule. Let me get back to you. Let me look at my other commitments and get back to you. Because if you buy yourself some time, you don't feel that pressure right there, especially if it's your admin
I love
asking you to
that.
do something, right? And then respond in writing. And the reason to respond in writing is, one, you have a chance to get your thoughts together, right? And two, you have a paper trail, which sometimes we really need. And so then when you do say no, here's kind of the secret sauce. So buy yourself some time, respond in writing, don't feel the need to apologize. Even saying unfortunately is an apology. I like to use the words as it turns out. It's very neutral, takes any emotion out of it. Thanks for thinking of me for this extra committee, whatever, as it turns out. This year, and what you want to give as a reason for your no is not, it's not in my contract, or I'm already overwhelmed, or I have family obligations. None of those things. You need to give a student-focused reason. If you give a student-focused reason, there's really no way an admin can say something to you. So, for example, a student-focused reason might be, and those buzzwords, right? I'm like anti-jargon, but on campus, tier 1 intervention, PLCs, like differentiated instruction, right? All the buzzwords that have been fed to you as the priorities for the year, you got to kind of feed it back. So an example would be, if someone asked me to be on a committee, thanks for thinking of me. As it turns out, this year I have many students who are below proficient. I feel my time would be best spent providing tier 1 intervention, right? You just go through, you know what I mean? To bring those kids up to speed. And, my extra time is at capacity right now, right? So as long as you've given
I like that. My extra time is at capacity.
Yeah. Or like when I coach people on how to set limitations. Okay, I am at capacity right now. Which other things that you have given me would you like me to drop off in order to do this? Like, if you're asking me to do this, I'm happy to do it. I'm a team player, but I am at capacity. In fact, I'm beyond capacity. So tell me which other thing that you've asked me to do, I'm able to drop right now. Help me prioritize. What other things can I stop doing in order to accommodate your request, right? So kind of seek help that way. So you're seeming like it's not that you're saying no, but you're just really busy doing the other priorities that somebody has asked you to do. And if they're student focused, it's going to be hard for an admin to say no to you. So those are just some of like the tricks, but I'm sure at the end we can tell people I have a resource. It's like a whole PDF on how to say no and how to say yes with the limitations. And it has sample scripts and templates, and it's very user-friendly. It's designed to coach teachers to drop their most dreaded duty. Because, I'm never going to be someone who says, just work your contract hours. That is not realistic. But there's a huge difference between taking on something that fills you up and you're passionate about and that you have fun with, and then what I would call an ice picker, which is like, I would rather stick an ice pick in my eye than spend an hour in this meeting, right? So for me, if I love astronomy, I would take on astronomy night. I would put in a digital star lab. Like, that was a lot of work. I loved it. It filled me up. I got to see every kid in the school. Whereas if you asked me to be on even though it was science, in a committee that unpacks the standards and sit there like, oh my gosh, like if it didn't involve kids, why am I doing it? And yet I had a teaching partner who at the end of the day had zero capacity to be with children anymore. And so he would love to do the curriculum stuff. So that's another thing. Recognize that what you're dreading to do is somebody else's dream assignment. So ideally there's a balance there. So those are some of the things I would say. But
Hey teachers, quick break in the podcast because I have something truly special for you. The Teacher Career Transition Summit is a free virtual event packed with expert advice, real success stories, and step-by-step guidance to help you explore new careers and land a job you love. It's happening on Saturday, June 14th. So if you're hearing this before then, go grab your free ticket. And if it's already passed, no worries. You can access the full replays or join a waitlist for the next one. Head on over to our website, teachercareertransitionacademy.com/summit to check out what's available now. And back to the podcast. And I like one of the tactics that you mentioned, because I was going to bring it up too as something that is very, very common in corporate America. You know, I've been on both sides. I've been the employee trying to please my manager. I've been the manager putting too much on people's plates, maybe not knowingly. But going back to, I'm happy to do it, but what else should I not do? Like that is so I mean, in other professions, that's just day to day. Like no one blinks an eye. If I had an employee say, I'm happy to do that, Lisa, but I won't be able to hit my deadline on this or this, I'm just happy that they're like, oh, thank you for sharing that with me. I didn't realize what your plate is like. But saying it for some reason in education, it's just not received. And I think that's one reason, or one thing, that when teachers make the leap to corporate America, their minds are blown that people like respect boundaries maybe a little bit more, or that it's common to say, you know, my plate is full. What else, you know, what should we juggle around? What's the priority?
I always like to coach my own staff to say, you know, if you ask me, help me prioritize, because sometimes they couldn't. Right. I would sit in my office and see people scrambling around and doing other things. And like I said, I was in staffing and I would see people, like, just to give an example, oh my gosh, you know, I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, I've made 20 calls. I can't find a receptionist. Okay. When does that start? You know, next week. Okay, well, we need 20 people on a production line at noon. Okay, that's a bigger priority right now. So, you know, I'm giving you permission to stop looking for the receptionist, right? Go do the stuff that needs to happen now, right? And so I would always, coach my own staff. Say, if you need help prioritizing, and that's what it is, right? Like, okay, I'm happy to do that, but I would use the words, I'm kind of at capacity. So tell me what other things, help me prioritize. What else do you need me, you know, to drop or to move down or to move forward. And I feel like teachers need to have that skill too, right? Just because we think every email is mission critical. Like I talk with teachers a lot about, you know, we're used to, you know, the common metaphors, wearing all the hats or juggling all the balls. And I try and tell them, listen, not all balls are equal. Right? You can't keep all the balls in the air. You got to figure what's a glass ball that if I drop it, that's really gonna be a problem. And what's a rubber ball? Just let it go, let it roll away. You can pick it up later or it'll just roll away. No one really cares. Sometimes I tell people, wait till you get the second email about that. Sometimes people forget, you know, by the time you so like trying to prioritize even our own work, you know, because everything in teaching is, everything seems important. Right? And there are some non-negotiables. You got to get your grades in. You got to do report cards. You have to do conferences. You know, there are things, you know, you got to do the state testing there. You've got to prep the kids for that. There are things that can't be moved in the schedule. But on top of that, there are other things that you can be like, you know what, planning that an extra assembly is just not in my capacity right now. It's more important that I get grades in, right? Or whatever it is that people need to do. So that's something else that teachers need to recognize, is not all balls are equal. And I think one of the problems with teaching is we get guilted into stuff, right? And that's for the kids. Like if you don't do it, especially those enrichment things, like I said, putting on an astronomy night or, you know, a lot of schools don't have a lot of art and music and theatre or even a lot of sports programs anymore. And you feel like, oh, well, if I don't do it, the kids aren't going to get it. And that's not necessarily true. There's a parent can do it. There are other ways to do it. And so I think that is also having part of that teacher heart, is that we get easily guilted, like, oh, the kids will go without, oh, the kids, you know.
Well, one thing we talk about here at the Academy that's come up in several of the coachings is the term toxic positivity, which is rampant in education. So they,
Yeah.
oh, but everything is spun to make you feel guilty with phrases
Yeah.
like, oh, remember why you got into this,
Oh,
or it's for the
please.
kids. Like they're trying to talk positively to you, but it's actually just such a toxic way of thinking. It's
Yeah, like, oh, think positive. I mean, to me, because especially because I wrote a book, but, it's been 8 years ago that I wrote it, positive mindset habits for teachers, right? Okay, it was all about, how do you, it was really based on the science of being happy. And I felt like all the building blocks for positive psychology says to be happy can be found in teaching. So purpose, gratitude, connection, flow state, all those things, right? That from a brain science and from a positive psychology standpoint, prove that we can create and synthesize our own happiness to a certain degree. I felt like teaching can provide those with the right mindset. But of course, that came back to bite me the last few years, especially when things were so crazy, when we had to pivot and teach out of our homes and everything. People are like, oh, you're toxically positive. I'm like, no, being toxically positive is like looking at the, when you're in the car and you have the gas gauge, like looking that it's almost on empty, which of course is, this metaphor for being so burnt out, and just sticking a happy sticker on it. I mean, obviously you're going to run out of gas, right? You need to make some changes. You need to, go replenish and refuel. And I feel there is this big, because administrators with every good intention in the world are just as stressed, just as burnt out, just as unskilled as setting boundaries, because nobody ever taught them how. We didn't learn that in teacher training school. We're not learning that in PD. Well, I teach it, but not a lot of people are going to hire somebody to come and teach their staff how to say no, let's be honest. So, I feel that a lot of times when administrators are toxically positive, it's because they don't know the answer either. And they're like, oh, well, just think of the positives. And like, oh, well, let's be, solution oriented. And, they're using all those words. Yeah, more buzzwords, more shaming people, right? It's just shaming people and making people feel inadequate, that they cannot keep up with the pace, when really what we are asking of them is not sustainable. You can do it for a short time, but you will burn out. And I'm going to say right now, especially to therapy people listening, I'm never one to want to coach people out of teaching, because my heart is still there and I help people overcome the burnout. But I want to say, if you really feel you cannot move forward with teaching, it's sad when teachers burn out and leave, but I'll honestly say it's kind of worse when teachers burn out and stay. It's not good for you, it's not good for morale, and it just doesn't deliver to the kids, and it makes for a miserable day in the classroom. And you don't even need to be a teacher to know that. You just needed to have been a student at some point, right? If you can remember back to your favorite teacher, did it really matter if they had Lucy Calkins or Houghton Mifflin? You know what I mean? Did it matter what curriculum they had or what they had on their walls? None of that really mattered. What mattered was what you felt in the classroom. You felt safe, you felt valued, you felt that the teacher was passionate about meeting you wherever you were and helping you move forward, whatever that looked like for you, and willing to have fun. And if a kid was having a bad day, not being super reactionary about that. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, the teacher who was just worn out, exhausted, frustrated, easily triggered. And it was just a miserable day for everybody. Kids would test the boundaries. Just, oh, is she going to blow today? Is she not going to blow today? Right? I mean, we know that if you really
law of attraction, you're going to attract from your students
you're
feeling when you get up there in front of everyone.
And if people feel that, oh, yeah, maybe that's a bit woo, like I said, no, go to the science. That's called co-regulation. That's a thing. Like, it's a scientific fact, right? And so here's to flip it, right? I had to have my lovely list. I had to look around the room and train myself to look at the kids who were on task and the kids who were helping each other and the kids who had demonstrated some growth, rather than hyperfixate and focus on, because maybe that was 20 of the kids. Now, maybe there were 3 or 4 or 5, or more recently, 7 or 8 kids who were like in competition for who could be the biggest class clown for the day or just be annoying or wind you up. Like when you focus on those kids, it just all goes, it's not that you can't manage that behavior, but you can't just get fixated in it and look for it. You know, the teacher who just takes one look at that kid and before the kid's even done anything, oh, here we go again. I bet today's going to be that day. They're going to do this, right? That's like the opposite of the lovely list. That's looking for the, you know, the tarnished. And that's not giving a kid a fresh start every day. So like I said, and that is because, not because teachers are mean and horrible and don't like kids. Of course not. Why would they have become a teacher if that's how they felt? But what happened is they got burnt out, they're exhausted, they have barely enough energy to take care of themselves. They're resentful that by the time they get home, they have given every ounce of patience they have to their class, and when their own kids come home and need help with homework, they've got nothing left to give. Nothing left to give. And their spouse might be very judgmental, saying, I thought you were a teacher. Why can't you help your own kid? Right? Like, it's real. It's so painful. Anyway, I'm not telling your listeners anything they don't know. Maybe I'm validating. You're normal. How could you not feel that way? It's not a personality deficiency. Right? It's a lack of skills, a lack of training, and the way the system is set up. Okay, yep. So at least I want to validate people that way. It doesn't make you an awful human being because that's how we're meant to feel, right? Like, oh my gosh, well, you know, if you really cared about kids, you would do it. Like, oh my gosh, like there's only so much we can give here. Yeah.
So I love the practical tips on burnout. We're talking about a lot of good things. There's one more thing I wanted to touch on because I know you teach like a framework of empowerment for educators, and we probably touched on bits and pieces of it already. But is it the ECHO framework?
It is the ECHO framework.
On that?
Yeah, you know how teachers love their acronyms, right? So all the work I've done, the writing I've done, the books, everything, if you really just want to kind of consolidate it into one thing, it would be the ECHO framework here for educator empowerment. And so it's ECHO. And that is, you know, in its simplest form, what you're putting out there is coming back to you. Okay, if that's the only thing you remember, what you're putting out there is coming back to you. But the E stands for your energy teaches more than your lesson plans. Right? And we have touched on that. And that is really where my work starts. Like, it doesn't matter, you know, how you show up matters more than just about anything else, right? More than what's on your wall, what curriculum you have, all those other things, right? So your energy teaches more than your lesson plans. The C is control what you can control. So that's the central tenet of empowerment, right? When you worry about all the things that aren't out in your control, which in education right now is a scary time, right? Oh my gosh, who knows what's going to happen, right? Control what you can control. I still substitute teach. I'm in schools every day. I live in San Jose, California, which has a huge, you know, migrant population. And yes, I could be spinning out about all the things that could happen. But at the end of the day, when the kids are alone in a classroom with me, I have complete control over what happens in that classroom. It's my little kingdom. Kids can feel safe with me. They can feel empowered. We can still learn. We can still create magic. So control what you can control. The H is happiness can be synthesized, right? So that's all my nerdy brain science about the intentional habits that can help you get through your day in a more positive way. And like I said, that was the foundation of one of my books. And then the last one, the O, super important. Other teachers' experience doesn't need to be your experience. So right now, we just talked about the experiences in education that are disempowering, that are burning everybody out. That doesn't need to be your experience. You can have your own experience. I always tell people you can create your own path. So with intentional habits, it's how I came about writing the book. I taught in a small school. We had one classroom per grade. So essentially it was kinder through 8, but essentially we all had like the same kids. They all went through our classroom, the same kids, the same parents. was a Title I school, so I wouldn't even say the same resources. I'd say the same lack of resources, right? So we all had essentially the same things. My experience was very different than everybody else's. And they would say, why is your experience different? What do you do differently? And that is what led me to say, oh, okay, well, here's some things I learned and I've done for myself, and it can be helpful. But you can have your own experience. Look around campus. Is there someone having a good time? Someone having a better time than you? Start hanging out with them. See what they're doing. What are their habits? It all comes down to habits, right? Habits and mindsets. So
I love that, and consistency, and that I'm pretty sure that lovely list is going to come in there at some point for folks.
At some point, yeah.
So as we round out our chat, just any final advice you have for teachers who are kind of on the fence or considering making a career change?
So one, let go of the guilt. Like the whole last year that I was teaching, I knew it was going to be my last year. And I spent my whole year making sure, succession planning. Hey, the person who took over got a whole year of lesson plans on a spreadsheet, everything linked to a Google Drive, I could not have set somebody up more for success. That's what I needed to do to feel good about leaving. My administrator knew, all the things. Even with all that, and knowing that I had put in 20 plus really good years, I had nightmares about abandoning children every night for a year. Come on. I'd have these awful nightmares, they're in the playground and I never came back from lunch. And that was just all that guilt surfacing up, right? And so let go of the guilt, right? And the other thing, there's no nice way to say it, because it was my experience. Make sure the problem isn't you. Okay. Like I said, I left corporate America because I was overwhelmed and I stressed myself out. And within 2 years, 3 years, I recreated the same circumstances. So yes, the institution is set up in a way that is particularly hard for people not to burn out. But learn some skills. Don't leave just because you say yes to everything. Because guess what? Don't go somewhere else and say yes to everything too. And look at your own life. It isn't, it's going to be a pattern. It's not just going to be at school that you say yes to everything. It's going to be everywhere, right? Are you always the go-to person? Are you so excited to have summer off, and then when summer comes, your family, extended family, hijacks your home? Or your whole summer, right? You're off. You can take mom to the doctors. You're off. Can you help me move and clear out my garage? You know what I mean? We say yes to other things, and we have a long list of things we want to do, and we never get to them because we're busy helping other people with their list. So that's what I would say. One is let go of the guilt. Two, just learn some skills. Make sure that you don't create the same problems with you somewhere else you go. And then the other thing, 3, is the world is bigger than your classroom. I think, for people, especially people who went straight into teaching, maybe you don't know that there are other jobs out there that can be fulfilling, that can give you those components for positive psychology, connection, service, purpose. There's lots of jobs that can do that for you, where you can leave at the end of the day and not take home. It's not so much the physical work, right? It's the emotional toil that we take home with us, right? That we don't sleep well, that we worry all the time. It's that a lot of teachers want to let go of. I just want to be done when I get home. Right? I want to be present with my family. I want to be present in my life. I want to have the energy when I get home for other things that I love. Even if you work in corporate America later, maybe you don't get home till 6, right? But you can go to bed at 10. It's better to have 4 really great hours that you could hang out with your family and do things than it is to I was home by 4:30, but were you really? Your head was still somewhere else. So that's what I would say.
Oh, great. Well, this is such a great conversation, Grace. I love some of the very specific, tangible takeaways, the strategies and tactics for just kind of the way to approach things, the intention, some of the tricks for saying no. And I think that saying no guide is going to be very popular. So we'll make sure that we link that in the show notes as well as other items. So Thank you so much for joining us today, Grace.
You are so welcome, and good luck with your mission. As we discussed kind of off air, you must be very busy at this particular time, but I love that teachers have support and guidance to help them navigate, you know, possibly life after teaching. Life isn't over just because you're not in a classroom every day. You still have value, you still have worth, and everything that makes you want to be a teacher, that teacher heart, you can find in other places. So thank you so much.
Grace, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your heart and wisdom with us today. I know so many teachers needed to hear this, whether they're recommitting to the classroom with a healthier mindset or giving themselves permission to explore a new chapter. If you love this conversation, be sure to check out Grace's book, Positive Mindset Habits for Teachers, and her Self-Care and Life Balance podcast. Both are linked in today's show notes. And if you're ready to take the next step, whether it's staying, growing, or transitioning out of the classroom, remember you don't have to do it alone. Check out the resources we have inside of the Teacher Career Transition Academy to help you with career clarity, confidence, and give you community to support you on your career transition. If this episode resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a teacher who could use a little extra support right now. Until next time, friends, the journey is just the beginning. Embrace the adventure.